Welcome to the channel. I'm Clevett and I would like to talk a little bit about some blades. Now, as a carpenter, I spend my life cutting all types of material. Indeed, many builders spend their lives cutting all types of materials. And as materials have become more interesting, more sophisticated, so has the need for our blades to evolve to accommodate and cope with some of those new modern materials. So one of the materials that I'm cutting at the moment is a cement-based backboard. Now, this particular material is super hard, it's super heavy, and as the name suggests, it's made of cement. So you can't just pick up a typical circular saw blade, even a tungsten carbide tipped good quality blade, and cut it. It's just not designed for that. So when I first started researching about how to cut this board, how to work with this board, I was surprised to see that the blades designed to do this have got very few teeth. The blades are called polycrystalline diamond. So I've got some really nice Freud blades here, okay? So I tend to use a lot of Freud blades because the company's got a really good pedigree. They've been making saw blades for decades, many decades. And their sort of technology behind making their blades and the materials they use are superior to quite a lot of others that you find on the market, yet the cost is pretty good too, okay? So this is the polycrystalline blade. It only has 4 teeth, okay? So it's designed specifically to cut through this hard material, this cement. Also, it will cut plasterboard as well. So you might think, when would I need to use one of these on plasterboard? Well, in this project here, we had a lot of insulated plasterboard, which is quite thick, and a lot of angles as well. There's no way you can do a really good job with just a knife anymore by the score and snap method. You can use a handsaw, but it takes a lot of time and it's quite messy. Whereas if you set yourself up with this on a rail saw, nearly every carpenter has a rail saw of some description, then you can simply use that with your rail and get the cuts really nice. And the dust extraction is important as well. So let's take a look at a typical blade. Now, this blade here is a wood blade, and this is designed for laminated panels. So just to give you an idea of the difference, this blade has many teeth. Indeed, it has 12 times the amount of teeth. This has 48 teeth, and our polycrystalline diamond blade only has the 4. So this blade here is for cutting materials such as this. So this material here is an MDF core, and then it's got a really high quality plastic laminate all over it, okay? So what you need for that is a saw blade that's not going to sort of cause too much chipping, and these are absolutely perfect for that as well, okay? So these are designed for a laminated panel. So the range that you can get with Freud is huge. There is a blade for nearly every saw and every material, and I think it's really useful to be able to go to a firm which has got an understanding of what we need, and you can source exactly what you want. So I'm going to be doing the cutting of this cement board now. I'm going to pop that in my rail saw. Now, there's a couple of notable things here. When we're cutting a lot of timber materials, sheet materials, quite often we'll have a sacrificial sheet, and we'll lay our work directly on the sacrificial sheet. We'll set our blade just beneath the thickness of the material. So it's 18mm. We might set the blade to 20mm deep, and then it will just cut just into the sacrificial board underneath. Now, what that does is that helps the dust, or nearly all the dust, come back up through into the saw's dust extraction. With the cement-based board, you wouldn't want to lay that on a timber-based sheet because these blades aren't designed for timber, okay? So what you need to do then is either use another one of the cement boards, like a sacrificial one, or even a sheet of plasterboard. So you can put some ply down, put the plasterboard on there to give it some support, and then you can sort of lay your cement boards over the top and cut them. But again, you really only want that tip of that blade to be 1 millimetre or 2 underneath. So you're only actually just scoring into the sacrificial board underneath. So that's quite important. If you don't have that underneath, you can run it across the top of your trestles, providing you're not cutting into timber too much. But you will get a bit more dust escape, of course, because you haven't got the suction of the blade pulling up from the sacrificial board. So I'm going to get on, put the blade into the saw. I've got some panels to cut to go behind where I'm going to be putting a toilet. So what I'm going to be doing first is cutting the boards to size, and I've got a few boards over the top as well, which form the rear of the wall. And then, because we're going to fit this toilet before the tiling has happened, we need to allow for the tiling. So I'm going to use this piece of laminated board, which is roughly the thickness of the tile and the adhesive. I'm going to put the cement board on, fix this over the top, attach the WC pan to that, and then we can use it while we're doing the rest of the work before the tiler has been. So this is the frame that we've got to clad. So this whole face gets clad in that cement-based board for tiling, and it's a square basically. I've just got to measure the width, measure the height, trim it in. Now I can allow a little bit here because the tiling will butt up against the plaster finish there. So for ease of getting it in, if I measured this across, if it was a timber panel, I'd want to shoot it in quite tight. But I will allow at least 6 millimeters in the overall width, just to make sure I've got about 2 or 3 millimeters either side to make me sort of make an easier job of getting it in. Then I need to cut it around this, which is the flush plate box, and also around the flush pipe, and also, you know, the soil pipe there, and these bolts. So then I'll fix a cement board with a particular screw, a cement board screw, straight back. Then I'm going to use that laminated panel to go over the top to mount the toilet in exactly the right position for when I tile. Then when we tile, we'll take off the pan, take off the panel, tile, and when we fix it all back, all of the fittings are the correct length. So we haven't got to do that twice, okay? So that's basically what we've got to do. So it's a matter of measuring the width, measuring the height, cutting it out, then marking on these. I can use the rail saw to plunge through and make these cuts as well. I can slightly overcut because it's being tiled and get the holes drilled out. So it's a fairly straightforward job. But as I say, if you didn't have a polycrystalline diamond tip blade, you'd be trying to do this, well, I've seen people try to do it with hand saws, try and score it and snap it, but it really is difficult. You really do need one of these blades, okay? So let's go and get that done. Okay, so I'm going to measure the width and I'm going to give myself 6 millimeters. So I'm going to measure over, and it's about 1103. So I'm going to make my panel 1098. I reckon that'll be about perfect. Now it's nice and parallel. I managed to be able to build all of this building, so I know it's nice and true. I'll just check it at the bottom as well, somewhere in the middle. But 1098 should be absolutely fine. So 1098, that's my overall width. Now we need the overall height. We're coming up to here, and then we've got a shelf going over the top, which will be tiled too. So off the screed here, and we've got about 1185 if I allow a couple of mil. So 1185 there. Check the other side here. And 1185 will be absolutely perfect there as well. So we can keep it nice and true, 1185. So I'll keep the board edge at the top. I'll keep one of the board sides there, so I'll be taking off there and I'll be taking off the bottom. So that gives me the square that I need. I'll also make these bits while I'm making that as well. So I need a piece for the top, then we need a square to go into the back here. So I've got 1, 2, 3 bits to cut initially. We'll get those cut all in one go. I like to do all my cutting together. Then we'll break out all these bits by doing some drilling holes and that sort of stuff and bring it back in. So the first thing I do is cut it, then I'll set out the center line, mark these items on and get them in. So I've got a board edge and a board side there. This one's got a little bit of damage, so we'll take that side off. And we're 1098, so we're not taking masses off. We're taking that much off there. So I've got it on top of another piece of board. There's nothing actually wrong with the bit of board underneath. It was splashed with the plastering. It must have been leaning against a wall when the plasterers were around. So I can still use that for some of the other little bits there. So that's my width. So I will cut that off. Now the rails are pretty good, they hold themselves, but it's sometimes pretty good to put a clamp on them as well, just because you don't want it to move. I'll also be wearing a mask. So I get the depth of the saw set. So I just want to cut straight into this sacrificial sheet just a little bit. So that's all set, ready to go. Plug in the extractor. Plug in our 110. We've got a 110 saw here. Been doing a bit of site work and this is what we tend to use. So once you're set up, you're laughing, aren't you? You know, new blade, nice new blade. Fairly new saw actually as well, so that's nice. So let me show you how deep we cut into the sacrificial board. It hardly touches it, it's just enough to get through the material. Now you can see that that cut is super fine and smooth, and it actually cuts, excuse the cliche, but it cuts like butter. It's a beautiful blade, a really nice blade, and quite low dust. So I'm just going to cut the length of that and then get the holes drilled. So the next job is to simply cut out for our pipes, our bolts and our flush plate. So it's fairly straightforward because I have actually got a template, a foam template that comes with it. So I'm just going to transfer those dimensions onto the board, drill them, saw them, cut them, get them out of the way, and then we're ready to screw the panel in place. This basically slots over everything, so we just need to copy that. Now to get the dimensions, they fit snugly over these bolts here, so I'm just going to measure down from the top to the top of that template, and it's 703 millimeters. 703, so that's what we need. We'll mark on there 703 at the top, 703, and the centre of that is 545. Just transferring these measurements down, straight onto the board. A couple of lines, I've got a centre line, and I've got the top of the template as we saw it in there, as we measured it in there. I've also got the centre line and the top of the flush box that we need to cut out as well. I've got the distance down, that's the only measurement I need, and the centre. Pop another line through there, and then I can cut this out basically. Now I'll probably cut the lines out of this because I want to make sure that it's not too tight. There's a lot of cover and the tiles will be actually doing the job. So we want to be roughly there. What I'll do is, because it's quite soft, is I'll just parallel that up with the top of the board as well. Another line through there. And we'll square those across. So that's what we're taking out the top. Now we just need to mark the holes on the bottom now. So we're very lucky, I say we're very fortunate we've got this nice template there. So I've got a centre line there, centre line here, and that's our cutout line. Now there is a little bit of airspace around these cutouts here. So, and if you can see they're actually oblong, they're not actually circular. So I will just go with a slightly oversized drill bit for these. And that's what we need to take out, X, Y and Z. So I'm going to drill those out. Oh, that's pretty good for that one. And that's where I want to be drilling that one. Put a pilot hole through there. Line that up, same thing, mark centre of the hole, pilot. These ones I can go straight in with this one here, 25 millimeters will be absolutely perfect. Then, using an old handsaw, you can just take out that last little bit. So you see a handsaw will tackle it, but you know, I wouldn't try and cut much with it because the teeth are gone in a couple of seconds. And that's it, that's the board ready to be fixed. So it's just a matter of bringing in the board. Sorry it's a little bit small to film in here, but I'm just trying to capture. This is, you know, basically what it's all about. So I will get that onto these little holes first, aim it into the corner, and then pop it over everything else. A little bit of that expansion joint in there. I need to cut that out of the way. But it's looking pretty good. There we go. So that's basically how that one fits. Just got to screw that in a bit tight in that corner where that expansion strip is. And then I've got those other bits that I made. The bit that goes on the top here, that drops in there. The screws I'm using to fix this with are intended for cement board stainless steel. Let's get the front fixed. So what we need to do for that is make sure we're up. I've just got to come up on one side. So that looks pretty good there. If I just give that a screw in over there, and pull the other side square. So I'm going to give it some of this. I'm really happy with that. It's such a nice fit, and it clears all of our bits and pieces. So I'm just going to screw that in. To do that, I'm just going to use my spirit level to mark exactly where the studs are, because we have a metal frame to one side, and the last thing we want to do is screw into that metal frame, because you won't actually get into it. But using a spirit level takes a couple of seconds and you can get it all perfect. And the other thing is as well, like with all sheet material, where do we start? In the middle, hopefully. I put one in that corner to hold it, but the actual fixings we need to be putting in first are in the middle of the board to keep it nice and flat. So the polycrystalline blades, I mean, they are incredible. They cut this like a really good wooden blade or a blade for timber, cutting through any sheet material. And as I say, very low dust. It's only got 4 teeth. Incredibly smooth, no force needed. So this is where I'm going to start by fixing. And the good thing is, without the top on, I can look behind and make sure that the panel is dead flat against the structure, because what you don't want with a back to wall toilet that's actually suspended like this is you don't want any movement at all. It's all got to be really nice and solid. The screws go around about 200 millimeters apart for this material. It's quite heavy, but it's super satisfying. So that is basically how and why I like to use the polycrystalline blade. And as I say, the Freud polycrystalline blade is a very, very good blade indeed, and I reckon that with good practice that will last quite a long time as well. So I hope you found this video useful, and I've got some other blade videos coming up soon as well, different timber ones, and I hope that you'll join me for those.